It's Energumene opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile novices. Energumene by.
Doyle Sports has it all. Money back meetings every day. UK and Irish racing live streaming. Extra places and money back all losers offers. And a bet 10 get 40 welcome offer. Doyle Sports, this is betting.
So, hello and welcome back to episode number 40, Steve, of the season on the Champ.ie podcast. What can we say? Fantastic video yesterday, fantastic day. Energumene has regained the crown, Steve. And all we can say to the punters watching, you were warned.
Yeah, well, he was mightily impressive today. Maybe the race fell apart a little bit, but he could have done no more. He jumped, he travelled. If anything, I thought he was a little bit keen early on. I was a bit worried whether he was going to get home, but really from a long way out. You would have said by the time they started down the hill, he would have had to been on the floor to get beaten. And that's how it turned out. So a cracking day. And you were in sparkling form as well, Barry, yesterday, today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. 4 winners, and Tyne White was coming there. Absolutely cantering, Steve. I was a little bit worried that the ground might have went against him, but he was travelling like a horse that was definitely going to place anyway at a big price, 25 to 1.
You would have thought so. The winner, mind you, the winner did stay on very strongly and one going away. But put it like this, I'm not too sure. I didn't quite look what price he traded in running at that time, but he would have been very short. And I would have thought he would definitely have been placed.
Absolutely. So these videos, the day-by-day videos, we're really starting to hit a bit of form now, Steve. So we're going to kick on and look ahead to all 7 races on day number 3. And we're encouraging the listeners, of course, to get involved. But let us know your selections for day number 3 at the Cheltenham Festival. Of course, to be in with a chance of winning a Doyle Sports free bet. And we will announce all winners after the Cheltenham Festival for each of the days. So free bets are going to be given out. Make sure you're in the hat, 3 winners or more to qualify. But anyone, I suppose, look, Steve, obviously people are really enjoying your contribution to the Cheltenham day-by-day series, getting some great feedback. And, you know, you're also banging in the winners as well. And the naps are going in. Galler de Menil on the first day, Energumene today. And look, if anyone, Steve, wants to, you know, check out your service, obviously the advisory service, that's the details to Steve's website. So 33 years you've been in this game. I know you don't get too emotional when it comes to Cheltenham, Steve, but you're also in very good form.
Yeah, with all things, like Cheltenham, I love as a racing enthusiast. I love, and it is the peak of the year for me. I'd enjoy it without having a bet, but obviously the markets I find at times, because of the amount of Irish horses, I find very difficult to price. So unless I can price up with any confidence, then I won't actually be getting financially involved. But take that away. Yesterday, you know, when we had Constitution Hill and Honeysuckle, that was like one of the best days racing I've ever seen. And Constitution Hill, without doubt, now, I said it after his second race, but he's possibly one of the best horses I've ever seen. With the very big, you know, the greatest. We'll see. Hopefully he stays injury-free and he carries on. But yes, Cheltenham's wonderful. Never fails to amaze me.
And the stories today, I mean, they just continued, didn't they? We saw a monstrous performance in the first race with Impere Pa. He looks a superstar. To do that off the back of just 2 runs, the way he just, you know, cantered into the race. I mean, Goodland was disappointing. Was disappointed with his run in the end. Woody Mullins has had the 1, 2, 3 in the Ballymore. The real macker, Steve. What a performance. We did say yesterday it would take a good one to go by him. He drifted out to 8 to 1. All the better for the pockets.
It did. And there's been a couple, haven't there, the last couple of days that have drifted and run really well, bigger prices than we anticipated. But that, I think, Impera Pass, we mentioned it, I think, yesterday. It wasn't the nuts and bolts of the form. It was the manner of his performance that impressed me. And today it was the same. He just, again, travelled, jumped really well. And maybe he could be the one to put it up to Constitution Hill. That'd be good. I wonder if they could meet at either Punchestown or at Aintree. Is that feasible? I'm not too sure.
Here's a question for you. Next season, would you go chasing with him or stay over hurdles?
What, Empire?
Imperipa. Imperipa's absolutely bolted up. That's my Jerry Hannon impression, Steve. In case you welcome to the show.
Would I go? I think I would have to stick hurdling with him because we don't know. He could be a champion hurdler, couldn't he?
His jumping is excellent, Steve, and he has a massive, massive engine. Loved the way he really stuck it out well up the hill as well and pulled away from his rivals. That was a deep race. You look at Gaelic Warrior, just, you know, we mentioned he came the unconventional route from Handicap Company into the Ballymore. He's an official rating of, was it 157 coming in?
Yeah, so, 157, yeah. Right.
So Imperial Paz left him for dead, like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's run his race. It's not as if Gaelic Warrior didn't perform. I think he ran his race. And I think I'll be doing my ratings on that race tomorrow. And I think I will probably use him as my marker, Gaelic Warrior. He didn't stop up the hill, but Empire was just going away. So, yeah, he definitely, we said yesterday, he's one of those, the cliche could be anything. And that's still the case today, which is nice to say after seeing him win.
And in terms of Energumene, for me, Steve, I know there was lots said about last year's champion chase that, you know, the race fell apart last year. You mentioned it on this show. I'm sure there'll be lots of people thinking that. For me, it was a career best. I thought he was foot perfect the whole way. And it was just brilliant. It was brilliant to see it. And maybe next year, Steve, he could come back and do the hat trick, King Energumene, for now at least.
Well, something's going to have to come out of the woodwork. And if one of the horses that we're talking about go chasing, then it might be different. But then they'll only be going towards the Arkle, not the champion chase. But at the moment, the horses that we thought were going to be top-notch 2-mile chasers have not cut it, have they? They've disappointed. Edwardstone, primarily today, ran abysmally, really. We
could talk about Cheltenham Day 2 all day long, even throw Langer Dan into the mix. He's eventually won it the third time of asking at the Cheltenham Festival. But we must kick on, Steve, because we have 2 more days to look ahead to. And I suppose we're going to start off with the Turners Novices Chase. Mighty Potter, all the rage. He's now a shade of odds on. Banker of the week for many. What way do you see it?
I think if the Mighty Potter that I looked at his last 2 videos yesterday, went through his form. If he turns up and runs his race, the other horses will need to improve significantly to beat him. He couldn't have been much more impressive. He was ridden on the flat last time out at Leopardstown, but he did stay on very strongly and was going a bit further away. The further they went, the further he went away. There's a chance that Banbridge could improve again. Stage Star was pretty impressive when winning over course and distance last time. But on my figures, how I see it, he's the correct price, Mighty Potter. I actually priced this race up and I put him in at 11 to 10 against. So he's about the price he should be. I think he was that type of price yesterday. He's around evens, a shade of odds on now. So he's no great, this is a wonderful bet because it's great value, but he does look the one they're all going to have to beat. And the conditions look fine. There's further rain forecast through the night. The ground will be softer again tomorrow, and that won't inconvenience him, I don't think.
Because of the ground, just talk to me about the ground, Steve. What would you expect? Based on reports, what would you expect the ground to be?
Well, you've got 2 things. You're running on a different track tomorrow, aren't we? We're on the new course tomorrow. But the condition of the new course apparently is very similar to the old course. They're lacking grass growth, so the ground is not tight. The grass is not absorbing the moisture, and there's rain. It's not heavy rain, but there's rain due through the night. So if it was soft today, basically the hurdles track was soft. It was slightly better on the chase track today. But I think we can see it won't be any better than that tomorrow. So I think you need to be looking at soft ground horses, possibly not heavy ground, but soft ground horses. I think that's what you need.
I'd be willing to roll in on Mighty Potter if I got even money in the morning. He's got a shade of odds against at the moment with Boyle Sports. He's 10 to 11. if I got even, I think getting even money tomorrow is probably likely. I don't think he'll start.
Yeah.
I think he'll start odds on Mighty Potter. And the reason, just from a price perspective, I love the horse. I would make him at even money. He'd be my best bet of the entire meeting tomorrow. Based on what he's done so far this season, how much he's improved for a fence. And once again, Steve, looking at the opposition in here, for me, I don't see anything. If Mighty Potter, as you say, runs his race, he's going to win this regardless. You know, I don't think there's anything can improve past them. Banbridge, for me, big negative on the ground.
Yeah.
That's a big negative for him. You know, I couldn't entertain Banbridge beating Mighty Potter on soft ground on the new course at Cheltenham. Appreciated, obviously, has a very high rating over hurdles. Was beaten in the Arkle. He's stepping up and trip. That is interesting. He's a 9-year-old. You just wonder how much more improvement there is to come with him. And is he still progressing?
It's late in the day, Barry. Late in the day to be going up in trip with him, isn't it? That's what I thought. All of a sudden, 9-year-old, and then, you know, you can't think that he's been laid out for this race. Stepping up in trip, he's going to show that improvement at 9. And what I would just let me say to you though about getting even money. The bookmakers were running out of cash on track today. They'll be desperate to get a skinny one beat. They need one, so they probably may well steam into Mighty Potter, and they could well be wanting to get it and try and get it beaten because they need a skinny 1 or 2 to get beaten to recover the first day losses or the first 2 days losses.
He's not a horse I'd be looking to get beat anyway, that's for sure. Mighty Potter, he's just on the horse himself though, just before we move on. For me, at the Dublin Racing Festival, the moment of the Dublin Racing Festival was the way this horse jumped the second last fence. I mean, he won the race with one jump and a couple of strides afterwards. He just lengthened and lengthened. The scope he showed. And the progression he showed from his chasing debut, if you watch back his chasing debut at Down Royal, I was a doubter. But he's completely won me over. In the Drinmore, he made 2 mistakes in total. And at the Dublin Racing Festival, he barely put a foot wrong. At the new course, it's definitely going to suit him over 2 miles and 3 furlongs. It's tailor-made for him. People are mentioning about his run at Cheltenham last season. For me, that's not a worry. He didn't travel over great. In the particular contest, he was probably ran off his feet. I mean, Constitution Hill, they went very, very hard early, stepping up and trip this season and put a fence in front of him. He's a different horse. He'll stay to the line. He's handled undulations at Punchestown. So I don't think the track is going to be an issue. And I think, Steve, this is the banker of the meeting for me. That's Mighty Potter. If I get even money, I think it's definitely worth a go tomorrow. Per temps, what way do you see it? Race 2, 210.
Well, we've got a totally unexposed horse here, which is the favourite, the JP McManus owned. Thanks for the help. Who again showed significant improvement. It absolutely dotted up at Chepstow. That was only last month. They stuck it up. It went up £11 for that. So he's got in this race comfortably because he's got a hike up. I think they needed to win that race to get him up the handicap to ensure that he gets a run in this race, which has all come to fruition. And of the UK trained horses, he is the one that is completely unexposed and could take another step up. And if he'd have had another run or 2 before this race and had started earlier, there's every chance he would be a stone 20 pounds higher in the handicap. So I can make a really good case for him. I think the ground shouldn't be an issue. It was his second wind up before that last success. And there's always a doubt whether that will carry on. And we'll come to a horse later on where that's exactly the same situation. The wind up, will it have a continued benefit to the horse? So if it does, and he carries on his progression, he's an obvious chance. But the market tells you that he's 4-1. But they've been winning. At the woodwork, but he's got a live, obvious chance as the market dictates. The one that I would just mention at a big price is a horse called Mill Green. He's a very lightly raced horse. He's an 11-year-old, but he did finish third in the race last year off the same handicap mark. And he had basically, it looked a comeback run a few weeks ago to get ready for this race. Last year, he only had 2 prep runs before he ran in it. So I could see him running well at a big price. But he is exposed, as a couple of the others are. Whereas, as I say, Thanks for the Help is the unexposed big improver.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with you. I do think he is a strong favourite, like £11. The way he, as you mentioned, dotted up at Chepstow. Again, a course that, you know, undulations. I like a horse that runs at Chepstow coming to Cheltenham. He's proved himself. Obviously, he's, as you mentioned, very unexposed. Second run back after a win bop. The improvement was unbelievable. He's only 6. Lots of people will have Maxim on the radar since Shoot First has come out from an Irish perspective. He's 6-1 in the market. But the one I like in here is for Tony Martin. It's a Good Time Johnny. And there's a £21 swing at the weights with Maxim from his run at Leopardstown at Christmas. I don't think the British handicapper has been over hard on a Good Time Johnny. He's ran twice at the festival, ran reasonable in a champion bumper, and he finished mid-pack last season, the Albert Bartlett, after winning at Leopardstown over 3 miles in handicap company. I'd say there's more to come. This looks like it smells, Steve, of a major plot for Tony Martin in the Pertemps here. And off his current rating, I'd say there could be more to come. He's always had a bit of class about him, this Good Time Johnny. He'll be able to creep away at the back of the field. And we've seen horses coming from the back, held up, coming from the back of the field, get involved at this Cheltenham Festival so far. I don't think the ground is going to be an issue. Is Liam McKenna taking £5 off? I think it's very, very interesting. He's 10-1. Hasn't been without his supporters. I could see this horse going off a single figure price tomorrow. Good Time Johnny, if the Irish punters row in behind Tony Martin's charge. Wide open, as you say, plenty of chances in there, but this one smells of a plot.
as does the favourite. It just, as we've seen, there's been a number of races. We saw the handicaps yesterday. You mentioned the Skelton horse that won Langadan today. And the first 3 there had all been primarily aimed at today's race. And I do believe the stewards had Skelton in, I think, over Langadan as well, if I'm not mistaken today.
Does that surprise you?
And just said that it was something to do with why was he so much below form last time out? And he said he didn't enjoy the conditions, which were pretty much the same as he ran in today. But there we are.
Interesting. Very interesting. It did smell of a plot as well, didn't it? Apparently, he just comes alive in the spring in very interesting comments.
That was, I heard that as well. Yeah.
Didn't exactly look like spring conditions today, did it, Steve? We'll move on to what is race number 3, the 250 on the Cheltenham card tomorrow. And it is the Ryanair Chase. And the big question here, Steve, is can Shishkin back up his performance at Ascot?
Well, this is what I just said. We had this Shishkin is another horse that's had the wind up, another wind up. And that performance at Ascot last time, on my figures, my handicap ratings, was as good a performance as ever put up. So basically, when you look at his form, it ties in with your favourite horse in the past. It's basically his to lose. A reproduction of that wins the race. Take him out of the race, and it really is pretty open. You know, it's not a race to me that has an each way feel about it. Normally, you get a skinny price favourite, and I think, maybe there's only 2 or 3 other chances. But take Shishkin out, you've got 8 horses there, and I think all 8 could be given some type of chance. Obviously, GA Law looks as if it's got too much to find. Not sure that Chacun Poussoir is anywhere near the horse it used to be. But other than that, they've all got some chance. So Shishkin, I think it deserves to be a shade of odds on. simply because it's that superior. And as we saw at Ascot, the step up in trip, the breathing up, the tongue tie on, everything seemed to work. And the strong possibility, the strong probability is it will work again, I would have thought. And again, conditions wouldn't be an issue. He handles the soft ground perfectly well. And there's nothing at all wrong with that Ascot form. So, is another deserved short price favourite.
Very interesting point you make about Shishkin in the ground, because a lot of people might look at last year's champion chase and, you know, presume that he mightn't have gone on soft ground, but in actual fact, he's won a Supreme Novices on soft ground. It was more of a physical issue with him last season.
He didn't go a yard, did he? That race
didn't go a yard. So that's the point of making. It was nothing to do, to my eyes or to my knowledge, to do with the ground on last season. He just wasn't, obviously, you know, 100%. What do you make of Blue Lord, Steve?
He would be, I suppose, relatively unexposed, and he could take a little step forward. Certainly, conditions again for him would be absolutely fine. And if you took Shishkin out of the race, you'd be looking at Blue Lord and Genadil being the market leaders. Well, that's how they're betting anyway. Blue Lord is second favourite over Genadil. So the bottom line is here, Barry, I think the market is absolutely correct. I can't really find an edge into it. That's why I just said about the each way angle. I'm not sure that there is. And Shishkin's only the price it should be. You know, if Shishkin wound up being a 5-4 against chance, I'd back it. But I don't think it will. But you never know. If the first favourite's gone in and the bookmakers really are wanting to get something beat, maybe they'll try and get Shishkin beat.
It's really interesting just hearing you talk about it doesn't appear like an each way race, and I actually do take that point, Steve. So it wouldn't be a massive play for me. I have backed Blue Lord to win the race on the nose at 18-1 with the view to Allaho coming out of the race. I didn't expect Shishkin to appear on the scene after Ascot, so I have that one running for me. In terms of tomorrow, I will have a small each way bet on Blue Lord, because I do think he's the best of the remainder. And I thought this horse, just interesting listening to Daryl Jacob speaking about this horse after Christmas, where Blue Lord won over 2 miles. Now, he was coming in off the back of what I thought was a very good performance in the Clun Mile Isle Chase, over 2.5 miles on deep ground on his reappearance. He disappointed last time, where I think he just I thought he just ran flat at the Dublin Racing Festival, and maybe the ground was, you know, quick enough for him on that occasion. With the ground being soft, I would give him a good chance of getting involved for win purposes here. Certainly if Shishkin, the question is, can you trust Shishkin to back up that performance? And for me, I don't. You know, he's not the most consistent horse. If he does run to his best, he's obviously the one to beat. But of the remainder, I do think Blue Lord is a standout, and I think he is improving. And I'm not sure we saw the best of this horse just yet, because I think his optimum trip could be 2.5 miles. So I think Blue Lord is worth to go at 6-1 each way. I take your point. There is a bit more depth to this race than there was the Brown Advisory when we were speaking about each way races yesterday. Yeah. There definitely is. I'm just willing to take the chance on Blue Lord each way, because I think he'll be on the premises. It sounds like you're very much Shishkin.
I am. It's just with the connections involved with Shishkin, like when that reappearance run at Ascot, I couldn't have it on my mind at the price it was. I took it on. I thought, well, it's just got too much to prove, but it did prove it. It proved me wrong on the day, and throughout that race, as I say, I went against it, and I never held out too much hope. Certainly from Swinley Bottom, he always looked as if he was going to win to me. And all I was thinking, well, if the breathing op's not worked, then he may fall in a hole. But he didn't. He finished the race off really strong. And
career best for you?
I think what you're betting on is whether he's going to reproduce that form. And if he reproduces the form, and I suppose it is around for me, it's an over 50% chance that he will reproduce it.
That's fascinating. We'll move on. Steve, sounds like you're a bit confident. At 3:30, Tiupu. He's going to be popular, isn't he, Steve, on the ground?
Yeah. And his form ties in with Classical Dream. When I look back at that, they ran against each other, albeit over a shorter trip, and there's nothing to choose between them off of that. Classical Dream, on a couple of occasions, I've noticed, doesn't seem the most straightforward of horses. He can pull a little bit, and it seems to have his own mind. But that form suggests that he would have a chance with Tiupu. I wasn't sure. The other one that's in the market that's short is Blazing Cow. And I just wasn't sure where that improvement came from last time. That it was over a shorter trip again at Navan. But up until then, he looked at a level, albeit, unexposed, hadn't raced much. But that was a big step forward. And I just wonder whether that form is completely reliable. Maybe it is. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 chances there. Obviously all Irish. But I did think Tiupu deserved to be favourite. And I did think Classical Dream looked overpriced in comparison to Tiupu. I would have them closer together. Tiupu's around a 7-2 chance. Classical Dream around 9-1. I would have them closer together in the market. But I would favour those two. Home by the Lee. It looks another one that's possibly on the upgrade. He won well at Leopardstown. But again, when I went into the nuts and bolts of that form, I wasn't sure that it was as strong as the Tiupu form. So I kept coming back to those two.
Yeah, it's not a race I have a strong opinion on whatsoever. It really isn't, because if Marie's Rock was going to come to this race, it's maybe lucky that she didn't, because I was with Love Emba and she ran a stinker in the mares. But Blazing Cal, he's the sexy horse, isn't he, Steve? I mean, he really could be anything. And would it be?
And obviously, don't rule out Flooring Porter. He's the reigning champion. He possibly, again, as we've said for a few races now, this is what their aim has been. So they've not been at their best up until this race. They've all been somewhat get-ready races, make sure they're prepared and they're at their optimum when they come to the race. So if he reproduces last season's form, I've got hardly anything to choose between 4 of these, literally a pound. So how the race develops, what handles the ground, that's all going to come into the reckoning. But the biggest and the only thing that guides me is the price. And that's why I say, when I've got those all closely knit together, Classical Dream at 9-1 looks too big a price to me.
It's fascinating. Before Christmas, this race looked really... It looked wide open, didn't it? Now we're looking at it as possibly one of the most competitive races of the week. Ashdale Bob is 25-1. It has a lot to find. It has a lot to find on the bare form, on the bare form and on the figures. But if you actually watch back his race at Leopardstown at Christmas, he travelled into the straight like very much the winner, and he traded odds on in running. Ashdale Bob didn't quite get home. You'd wonder, is there more? He's only an 8-year-old. You'd wonder, is there more improvement to come from him? Has he reached the ceiling? He's 153 rated. Ran an absolute massive race off more or less top weight last season in the Coral Cup. And if there was one at a big price to get involved, Ashdale Bob. But as you said, if you look at the likes of from Tiupu, Blazing Cal, Flooring Porter, Home by the League, Classical Dream, even the French horse, there's plenty of depth in here.
Right. What I would say with Ashdale Bob, you said he's got a lot to find. He's not got that much to find on my figures. On official, my figures are different from official figures. That's why I do them, because I think I can find an angle in at times. And I've only got him 6-7 pounds behind the likes of Tiupu, Classical Dream, Flooring Porter. So it's not a massive step. You're looking for the horse to find maybe 5 to 7 minutes improvement, which, as you just said, it can be done. He's only an 8-year-old. So, but what you're looking at is that you've got 4 other horses there that could all take a step forward as well. So that's why he is the price he is.
Yeah, maybe 25 is a little bit too big. Maybe if someone wanted to have an each way go on him, it wouldn't be the worst shout in the world. The 410, Steve, is the Magners Plate. It's a race that the British have had a fantastic record in recent seasons. We won't go too heavy into the stats, but I think 5 of the last 5 winners have the best speed under 5 to 1, and So Scottish very much smells like a plot horse for very capable connections, Steve. Emmett Mullins, JP McManus, and on board is Mark Walsh.
Yeah, you know, all I can tell you about is the Brits here again. And there's nothing really outstanding. They've all got, if you look at horses such as Midnight River, El Redoto, That's All Right, Gino, they've all got a similar type of chance. They're all handicapped to their level of ability. None of them are particularly on the upgrade. But the one horse, again, at a much bigger price that ties in with Midnight River is a horse called Stolen Silver. They run against each other, course and distance here. And off that race, nothing to choose between them. Now, subsequently, Stolen Silver went to Warwick and ran a shocker, and there was nothing officially forthcoming about why it ran disappointingly. But I've got a great deal of time for the stable, that of Sam Thomas. They wouldn't be running it here if they didn't think that they've solved whatever issue that Stolen Silver had. So with Midnight River at 9 to 1, Stolen Silver at 25 to 1, for me, that looked a bit too big. And Stolen Silver, I think, would have a similar chance to Midnight River, El Redoto, and That's All Right, Gino. And they're all at least half the price of him, if not less. But in saying all that, whether any of them are going to get near, you just said the English might have a good record in the race. I think there's 1 or 2 Irish that might be lurking, namely that one that you said in So Scottish.
I do think he could potentially be lurking. At the same time, he is very much well found in the market. So, So Scottish, you know, he's not the most experienced type. Most of his winning is on good ground. He probably is well handicapped. I think they appeals his British rating as well. He's got a bit of a hike from the handicapper. And there's 2 horses, and I'm very interested to know your opinion on them, because I think we've 2 potentially well handicapped British horses in the race, Steve. And I'm going to fire the 2 of them at you, and I'm actually going to put the 2 of them forward as an each way selection. So split your stake for this race and maybe go with the 2 of them here. One is a horse called, and this would be my main fancy for the race each way, Steve. It's a horse set of Venetia Williams. Is called Ferrero Bamboo. Now, I'm absolutely fascinated that they're going to the plate, because I had it down that this horse might go for the Grand Annual again. It was went off favourite, of course, a year ago to the day for the Grand Annual. It went off second favourite, I should say, and finished 3rd behind Global Citizen in Cheltenham on what was really testing ground, heavy ground officially at Cheltenham last season for the Grand Annual. Look at his runs this season. We mentioned Tyne White earlier on the show. His first run of the season, he ran second to Tyne White, he was coming into that race fresh, and we know what that horse is like, fresh. He's had 3 runs since, and he's come all the way back down. He ran the Grand Annual off 141. He's come all the way back down the ratings to 135. He's a relatively young horse. He's only an 8-year-old. We know what Venetia's horses are like on the mud. She hasn't been absolutely fired in the winners of late. But off a mark, he's more or less carrying a feather weight here. 10 stone 6. Charlie Deutsch on board. And he's stepping up in trip, and he's off 137 or 135. I just think this horse stepping up in trip could be seen to better effect than he was over 2 miles. And I was just fascinated when I heard Venetia Williams saying that they were going this route. He's 11 to 1 each way. I could see money coming for him on the ground is going to be testing again tomorrow. And I would give him a very live chance each way. That's Ferrero Bamboo. I think it could be well handicapped. The other one I would mention is Shake 'em Up Harry, who this horse loved the testing conditions and was a beaten favourite at Cheltenham last time off 139. I'm not sure that was his true running. He never got into a rhythm on that occasion. He was a winner at Exeter on good to soft ground the time previous off 134. He's really likely race. He's a 9-year-old, but he's only had 7 starts over fences. And for me, Shake 'Em Up Harry could also be on a nice mark off 139. What's your thoughts?
Shake 'Em Up Harry is a horse that is unexposed. He could well progress, and the Ben Pauling stable, their horses have been right. He had a horse run today, which names I've forgotten, but ran really well. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Shake 'Em Up Harry run well. I know in the past they've had a few hiccups with the horse, but he's only had the 2 starts this season, and I would have thought this would have been an objective with the owners involved, Harry Redknapp being one of them. This would have been the target. So, yeah, I wouldn't say no to him. Just touching on Ferrero Bamboo, the more rain they get, even though he's stepping up in trip, I still feel the more he is a heavy ground horse for me. The more rain they get, the more you could fancy him. The negative is the yard at the moment. Even prior to Cheltenham, she had a purple patch a month, 6 weeks ago, and the horses were going really well, but they've just it may just be that they've become poorly handicapped, some of them, but some of them that you could have fancied have not been going that well. So I would have a slight reservation. And if you think last year she came to this meeting with a relatively small team and then had some excellent results. You know, her horses ran really well. Each horse she ran here, where it's not been the same.
Can be a bit of a streaky stable as well.
Yeah, generally it all depends on ground, doesn't it? Her horses are trained to go on soft stroke heavy ground. I can't think I've ever said that, oh yeah, this Venetia trained horse needs good ground. I don't think that's ever that comment has never passed my lips in the years that I've been doing this. Yeah. Apparently she trains on a very deep surface. The horse, and the other thing to remember with the yard, never doubt when they're stepping up in trip, if she thinks they'll stay, they'll stay. So don't worry about it stepping up in trip. She don't run them unless she thinks they're definitely going to stay.
I'm not. I think it has a right chance, Steve, at this Ferrero Bamboo. Could be well handicapped, and as she did have a winner on Plumpton on Monday, so maybe that's a slight bit of a positive. But and she 2 horses that came down today, which, you know, how well would they have actually gone? We do not know. So yeah, two against the field for me. 11-1 Ferrero Bamboo and Shake 'Em Up Harry are 2 horses I think will enjoy the ground and could be on nice marks. Steve, right, we're moving on to what is the 450. We're getting through it. Nice and sharp. This mare I love, Lucia. She heads the market at odds of 6-4 with Boyle Sports. Because of the Mullins battalion, I reckon we're going to get a bigger price tomorrow. And if we do get anything around 2-1, I'd have a go on her.
Would you?
I would.
It's one of those races that the amount of Irish horses you've got in is one thing, and not knowing the strength of some of the form involved there. But it just seems an extremely short price to me. Her form here, don't get me wrong, she's been really visually impressive. But the horses she's beaten really are not brilliant. In fact, her form ties in with You Wear It Well. They both ran against the same horse, both beat at exactly the same distance. The other thing I would say is that those at the top there all carry a penalty in this race. That could just be a negative. You know, they're giving £5 away to the others. And I think it's just the numbers of the Irish challengers would certainly put me off of backing Lucia at the price. She could be anything. The horse they ran against, by the way, Lucia and You Wear It Well, is a horse called She's a Saint. So if you look at that, and they both beat that, albeit they were varying distances. Lucia won over 2 miles, You Wear It Well was over 2.5. But You Wear It Well is a strong stayer, and dropping back in trip here on testing ground, I think that would be okay with the horse. She makes no appeal whatsoever at 6-4. The other Irish horse, just to mention, I did look at it, was Lot of Joy, that had some decent flat form as well. It had decent flat form in Europe, and then came and ran really well. I think it was in the Irish Cesarewitch, yeah. So again, there is opposition now, and I think at a skinny price, I would be tempted to be against Lucia rather than with it. You saying at 2-1 again? I think prices in these latter races with the short price ones will depend, or will the influence that the early results will have will be quite significant on the prices that these short ones go off. And so it'd be interesting to see what happens with Lucia.
Absolutely. I just get the sense with her from watching her run. I mean, she obviously was a bumper last season on soft ground. She blew Ava Grace out of the park at Sandown. That's a bumper. It's a different ball game now. She jumped the top well at Newbury. Obviously was on good ground. You mentioned the form which she's a saint. Doesn't look spectacular. But I was very impressed with her at Exeter last time when she was running against Palace Boy and Lallygag. Obviously, she's back in against her own sex now. But you do say that, you know, she does have the penalty to carry. I think she could be superstar material. There's plenty in here as well. Just, I think, might be a little bit better on nicer ground. You mentioned, you know, a Lot of Joy already. The likes of Magical Zoe, she won it down Royal. She's coming here, obviously, for connections. The race is named after Jack de Bromhead, of course. So I'm sure that'd be a big story should she run a massive race. Princess Zoe, very talented on the flat. She won't mind the ground now. And I did have her supporters. Jatara Nakini is a horse. I think we saw her at Down Royal as well. She might like a little bit of nicer ground. If there was maybe an Irish challenger to overturn Lucia, I give a bit of a positive mention to Hackadoo Taber, she's a horse that will not mind the ground conditions. She loved the softer ground. And she came with a nice reputation to Gordon Elliott's. She's a nice bit of experience as well over hurdles. And obviously a point-to-point winner as well. Davy Russell taking the ride for Kenny Alexander, of course, who won this race in the past with Tell Me Something Girl. So if there was an Irish challenger, maybe disappointed to see Ashrow Diamond not Ryan. Well, I'm not actually, because I've backed Lucia AntePost. But she would have been certainly probably the best of the Irish. Ashrow Diamond, given her form against the Geldings this season, she doesn't go. And therefore, I think it's Lucia's. It's Lucia's to lose should she turn up in the sort of form we saw her in so far this season.
I would just mention Under Control, the Henderson horse. JP owned a horse who absolutely won on the bridle, hard held. Again, the form as it stands doesn't amount to anything. Or say it doesn't amount to anything. It's not that strong, but again, extremely likely race. One race in France, came here and dotted up. 4-year-old as well, getting a deal of weight, getting over a stone from those top horses. And interesting that it's running as a 4-year-old in this race. So, I'd keep an eye on that. But I think we have to agree to disagree, Barry. You want to be with Lucia. I'd be looking to oppose it. One of us is going to be right.
I think we've agreed quite a bit on this series so far, but it's okay, Steve. We don't have to agree on a lot. The 5:30 is the Kim Muir. What's your knowledge like of the amateur jockeys?
Well, you know, the baseline is, you know, that the fancied horses will have the best jockeys on. That would have been arranged quite a long time ago. You have, again, got an extremely strong Irish challenge. The pick of the home-trained horses for me is arguably Beauport. In fact, of the UK horses, I think he's the shortest in the market at 10-1. But his form is probably only a similar level to what he achieved over hurdles. He's still relatively lightly raced over fences, just the 3 starts. So he could improve, but he seems to be on the correct handicap mark, but obviously a 7-year-old, 3 starts, he could take a further step forward. Courceren was another one, but he looks pretty much exposed to me. And And the other horse that I noted was a horse called A Night in Lambourne that had run at Cheltenham on the old course, but this was a few months ago. And he's form tied in with the Gordon Elliott trained Punitive. And when I looked at that race, I thought there weren't a deal to choose between them, but there's a significant difference. That was on good ground, and A Night in Lambourne does seem to need good ground to produce its best. So in the end, I wound up sacking A Night in Lambourne, who would have had one of the better jockeys on board, or will have, in Jack Andrews. So I'm left with Beauport as the pick of the home trained horses, and I think he's extremely vulnerable. So this is down to you, Barry.
Vulnerable? Why is he vulnerable?
But, simply because I think he is exposed as he is. I don't think... I would be slightly surprised if there wasn't a better handicapped horse than him that's come from Ireland. I think he's on about the correct handicap mark. So although he could run his race and he could finish in the first half a dozen, I still feel that maybe one or two or three of the Irish horses may be slightly better handicapped than what he is.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually think with Beauport, it was a massive performance at Carlisle over 2.5 miles on his first run of the season. Now, he's been running over 2.5 miles all season. And it's a big step up in trip, and I think it might be exactly what he needs. And he's come down the ratings £5 to 143, which is it's £5 lower than his hurdles mark. Now, for me, he's every inch a chaser. I don't know much about the jockey, I must confess. Mr. Zach Baker is on board.
He rides okay. I wouldn't worry about him.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the man, and that's I'm just looking. He obviously creeps in here by the skin of his teeth. Off 143, he would, for me, geez, Steve, I'd be interested in him. The one of the Irish, and it's a bit of a project for Patrick, is this Mr. Incredible, who obviously we've seen him in the UK, ran an absolute cracker when last seen behind I Will Do It at Warwick on heavy ground. So this horse will go well on, soft conditions. He's very, very lightly raced individual, very quirky sort as well. I mean, he's run out on one occasion. He pulled himself up at Tramore back in April time. He's obviously transferred to Willie Mullins. I'd say he could be very well handicapped of the Irish horses. Would he have an eye on the Grand National? Paul Byrne, he'd absolutely love a winner at the Cheltenham Festival. Very shrewd connections. Of the Irish, I'd be with Mr. Incredible. He's 11 to 2. I could see him going off favourite for the race. Stumptown is very popular. Barry O'Neill is obviously booked. But of the British, I think you have it spot on. Beauport is interesting. My only worry with him is anytime he's run at Cheltenham, he's run abysmal.
But I'm just thinking now, Barry, when you're saying about the Carlisle run on his reappearance, he has only had the 3 starts this season. And again, it just looks as if this could well have been the target. But I've just got that nagging doubt that it is UK form. It does seem to be of a level, and I just feel that the one or two of the Irish horses will be better handicapped than what he would be. You mentioned Mr. Incredible. That could well be the one. I don't know, but that's my base feeling with Beauport. As I say, I think he'll run well. I think he'll be thereabouts, and thereabouts for me in this type of race would be in the first. If he finishes in the first 6, first 4, there are enhanced place parts, aren't there? If you bet back in each way, some of the firms are going each way 6 places possibly. So that type of thing I could see. But it is a highly competitive race. You're reliant on jockeys. The ground has every chance of being pretty testing by then as well. So there's lots of factors to be taken into consideration when you're putting your money down.
Yeah, just about at the moment, Mr. Incredible would be the pick for me, but I would have respect for Beauport. Don't know much about the rider, as I said. And yeah, I'd say this was the target. They've been running him over the wrong trip with Beauport, and they've been, I reckon, they've got his mark down. And that was that. Don't forget, it was his first chase start ever in his career at Beauport, and he finished he finished in front of a graded winner over fences, which is Miller's Bank. Now, albeit he was getting lots, or he was receiving lots of weight from the second. I thought there was a massive run. I don't think he's shown his best hand since then. And should I go and see this rider, Zach Baker, ride a few winners? Maybe I might go back and look at a couple of videos tonight. He might interest me more tomorrow because I'm kind of talking myself into it now, Steve.
Can't watch him ride. He rides okay, but I wouldn't have any issues with him.
Yeah, but I would say about, obviously Patrick Mullins is certainly well able to ride. I reckon Mr. Incredible is well handicapped. He loved the trip, and the ground won't be an issue to him. And I'd say tomorrow he'll start favourite the race. He would go off favourite. So I reckon there is juice in his price at 11-2 at the moment. But yeah, maybe for anyone at a bigger price that wants to follow Steve in, Beauport could be the way to go. Right, Steve, that has been episode number 40, would you believe? And Energumene is the two-time champion chase winner. Absolutely cracking day today. Let's hope for similar luck tomorrow. Okay,
Barry. And really enjoyed it. Look forward to tomorrow.
And just one more plug as well. Steve's website, obviously, up on screens. It is, of course, slh.co.uk, an advisory service. Anyone wants to get in contact with Steve, details on the screen. But it's been an immensely enjoyable week so far, Steve. And we'll chat to you tomorrow ahead of Gold Cup Day.
Good luck. Good luck tomorrow.
Download the Boyle Sports app and receive generous offers for new and existing customers. Boyle Sports, this is betting.
Inside the final 150 yards, this is a special pair, and it's a hands full of grace. And it's Energumene opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile novices. Energumene by